Okay, 225, so this quick lesson is on curtain walls as a wall type that we'll use in Revit, and a couple specific things that we'll want to point out as we go through it. So let's just start with the wall tool, and instead of a generic wall type, we're going to scroll down and pick curtain wall 1. Now there are two other default wall types, exterior glazing and storefront. In particular, storefront is going to make a lot of assumptions for you. It's going to pre-place mullions. Everything's going to be locked in place, or actually pinned in place is the technical term. And so typically, as a designer, we're going to stick with curtain wall 1 as our default wall to use. So I'm going to start out just by drawing a basic wall in along an edge, something like that. And you can see what we're actually drawing is just a sheet of glass. If I look at that in a 3D view, and I'm going to change my view property to a shaded, so we can actually start to see sort of the color and transparency of the glass. The first thing that I can start to do with this is subdivide the glass into mullions. So to do that, first I'm going to place a curtain wall grid. And if you notice, along the vertical edge, I'll be placing my horizontal grid lines across the curtain wall. So I'll start at 6'8". That's kind of a convenient height. That's a typical door height. And I'll place another one here. I'm going to go to the middle, and you'll notice it. The curtain grids will snap to you to specific locations. So I'm snapping directly to the midpoint of my curtain wall. And then let's do 6'0" over, so I can put a double door in place. And then I'm going to do a few other things too. I'd kind of like to put, sort of a baseline glass in right here. So if you notice, the first thing, I have this panel that I want to put a door in with a curtain grid line running through it. I also kind of put this in at an arbitrary height, and I want that to be exactly 18 inches. So I'm going to start by selecting that lower curtain grid. Let's try that again. Make sure I select it here. Not the panel. Third time's the charm. There we go. So I'm going to go ahead and select my height on that, and let's make that 18 inches. And the next thing I want to do is, by selecting that grid line again, I can come to add and remove segments. So I'm just going to remove that center segment and get something like that. And I can use that sort of any time that I'd like to. So I'm going to come back through here and just add a few more segments in. I'm not paying nearly as much attention as I should, but we're just going to kind of cruise through that. The next thing I want to do is go ahead and add in mullions. So the mullion tool, I'm going to go ahead and select it. By default, it's going to start placing mullions one at a time. On here, on my drop-down list on the left, I can select my mullion type. Of course, I can start building some custom profiles, things like that. But the 2.5 by 5 is a pretty good default. So we'll just start with that. And I'm just going to come across and start placing mullions along the grid lines. So this process works well, but it's a little bit tedious. So there's another tool in Revit. I can go mullions, all grid lines, select the overall, and I instantly get all of my mullion grids in place. So the next thing that I want to do is add a door into this segment right here. So if I go to a floor plan view, the mistake that I see most people make right off the bat is they assume that they can go door and then actually place a door someplace in the curtain wall. But a curtain wall door is actually part of the glazing system, both in terms of how Revit responds to a curtain wall and in terms of how curtain walls work in construction. So what we're actually doing is replacing this glass panel with a door type. So to do that, there's a couple things that I need to do. First of all, again, if I launch the door tool, you'll notice there's, in the default door settings, there's no curtain wall door type. So we need to go through the process of loading that in. So I'm going to go home, door, and then I am going to load a new door type. Doors, curtain wall, double glass. So there's my preview. I'm going to say open. Now if you notice, it's not really doing anything yet. That's because that curtain wall type, or that curtain wall door type, is actually a panel replacement piece. So the first thing I want to do, I know a curtain wall door does not have a mullion at the bottom of it. That would be really an annoying thing and probably a major code violation to have to step over each time. So I'm going to select this lower mullion and delete it. Then I'm going to select this panel. And now for my drop-down list, I should be able to find a curtain wall double glass to create the door in that location. Now if I go to my floor plan view, you'll see that the door's in place. They act very similar to a standard Revit door, but they are actually part of the curtain wall system. Now I have a lot of people ask me, well, I have weird mullions, they're at a strange angle, things like that. There are some basic things that the curtain wall tool will allow you to do. If I select the overall curtain wall, and then let's say I select configure grid layout, I can start to do some things where I would put all of the mullions at a certain angle. Notice it's probably going to delete the door. But it is really sort of an arbitrary kind of thing in that it's placing the angles for everything along that wall. It's not allowing me to come in and do individual angles for each mullion. When you get to that position, my initial suggestion for you really is that you're now in the world of custom components, not in the world of using a standard Revit curtain wall. I want to show you one other common mistake, and then that's going to be all for curtain walls. And that is, if I come in, again, I'm going to start with a new wall type, curtain wall, and I'm going to draw an arc. So let's just do a 3-point arc, like that. And you'll notice it actually does not build an arc at all. And that is because, you know, for all practical purposes, you can't really bend glass. However, when I start adding my curtain grids in place, you'll notice that it's going to start forming to that curve. And the closer I put together my segments, the closer I'm going to be able to hold the curvature of that line. So it acts in a very similar way as a curtain wall goes, but it also is defined a little bit, again, by some parts of reality in terms of it's really difficult to take a huge piece of glass and bend it around. It's not like wood. You can't soak it and then bend it. It just doesn't quite work that way. You can heat it and bend it in certain ways. You can kind of do that kind of thing. But again, for most practical applications, that's just not the way it works. So that's the basics of curtain walls. The one additional thing that you can start to do with them is over the top of custom components. You can do wall by face and start to build curtain walls that way. Again, pretty soon after you get through the basic layouts, you're really starting to work into the world of custom components. So, like always, if you have any questions, drop me an email, dbeach01@drury.edu.